I stared at my phone in horror, the blood draining from my face as I realized what I'd done. The flirty message meant for my date tonight had just been sent to Eliza Matthews, my direct supervisor at the accounting firm where I'd worked for the past 3 years. Looking forward to seeing that smile that's been driving me crazy all week, followed by a winking emoji that now seemed like career suicide. 5 minutes later, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw her, Eliza, standing on my porch, her expression unreadable. My 6-year-old daughter Emma was coloring at the kitchen table, blissfully unaware that her dad's entire life was about to implode. If you've ever had that stomach-dropping moment when you realize you've made a catastrophic mistake, hit that like button. And if you want to see how this impossible situation unfolds, subscribe now, because sometimes our biggest mistakes lead to our greatest blessings. My name is Daniel Cooper. 34 years old, single father to the most amazing little girl, and until approximately 7 minutes ago, a respected senior accountant at Matthews Financial Services. Now I was quite possibly unemployed, definitely mortified, and somehow had to face my boss while wearing sweatpants with a pizza sauce stain on them. "Daddy, someone's at the door," Emma called out, her pigtails bouncing as she looked up from her coloring book. "I know, sweetie. Just stay there for a minute, okay?" I managed, my voice surprisingly steady despite the panic coursing through me. I took a deep breath and opened the door, already rehearsing my apology and wondering if I could claim my phone was hacked. But the words died in my throat when I saw Eliza's face. She wasn't angry. She looked nervous. "Daniel, I'm sorry for showing up unannounced," she said, tucking a strand of her chestnut hair behind her ear. "I got your text and I thought we should talk." Before I could respond, Emma appeared beside me, peering up at Eliza with curious eyes. "Are you Daddy's friend from work? The one he talks about all the time?" If there was any blood left in my face, it drained away at that moment. Eliza's eyebrows shot up, and a small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "Emma, honey, why don't you go finish your picture?" I suggested, my voice strained. "But I want to show Ms. Eliza my drawing," Emma protested, already tugging on Eliza's hand. "Daddy says you're the smartest person he knows." And just like that, my 6-year-old daughter had managed to make this excruciating situation even worse. But to my surprise, Eliza knelt down to Emma's level. "I would love to see your drawing," she said warmly. "And you can call me Eliza." I stood frozen in the doorway as my boss, the woman who determined my performance reviews and salary increases, walked hand in hand with my daughter into our modest living room. The same woman I'd accidentally sent a flirtatious text to minutes earlier. The same woman I'd secretly admired for months but kept strictly professional with because, well, she was my boss. The journey to this moment had been a long one. 3 years ago, I was a broken man. My wife, Sarah, had passed away after a brief but brutal battle with cancer, leaving me alone with our 3-year-old daughter. I was drowning in grief, medical bills, and the overwhelming responsibility of being both mother and father to Emma. When Matthews Financial Services hired me, it was a lifeline. The job offered stability, good benefits, and most importantly, hours that allowed me to be there for Emma. Eliza Matthews had inherited the firm from her father 2 years before I joined. At 32, she was the youngest CEO in the industry and had a reputation for being brilliant but demanding. Our relationship had always been strictly professional. She was fair but exacting, pushing me to deliver my best work. Over time, I'd earned her trust and respect, eventually becoming one of her most relied-upon team members. And somewhere along the way, my admiration for her intelligence and leadership had evolved into something more, something I'd buried deep because I couldn't risk my job, couldn't risk the stability I'd built for Emma. Until today, when a simple text message mistake threatened to unravel everything. "Your house is very nice," Eliza said as she sat on our worn couch, looking surprisingly comfortable despite being in her tailored blazer and pencil skirt while surrounded by Emma's toys. "Thank you," I replied, setting down 2 mugs of hastily made coffee. "Emma, why don't you show Eliza your drawing and then go play in your room for a bit? Grown-ups need to talk." Emma proudly displayed her colorful creation, a rainbow arching over what appeared to be 3 stick figures holding hands. "That's me," she explained, pointing to the smallest figure, "and that's Daddy, and that's..." She hesitated, looking at me with uncertainty. "Who's the third person, Emma?" Eliza asked gently. Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. "That's my mommy. She's in heaven, but Daddy says she still watches over us." The room fell silent. Eliza's eyes met mine, filled with a compassion I hadn't expected. "It's beautiful, Emma," she said softly. "You're very talented." After Emma reluctantly retreated to her room, I sat across from Eliza, my hands wrapped around my coffee mug to hide their trembling. "Daniel, about that text," she began. "I am so sorry," I interrupted, the words tumbling out. It was completely inappropriate and unprofessional. I was texting someone else and accidentally selected your name. I understand if you need to take disciplinary action, but please know it was an honest mistake. Eliza studied me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "Who was the text meant for?" I blinked, caught off guard by the question. I have a date tonight. First one in 3 years, actually. My sister's been pushing me to get back out there, as she puts it. "I see." Eliza set down her coffee. "And this date, is it someone you've been seeing for a while?" "No, it's a blind date. My sister's friend from yoga." I ran a hand through my hair, confusion mixing with my embarrassment. "I'm sorry, but I don't understand why you're here. You could have just ignored the text or addressed it on Monday." Eliza looked down at her hands. "The truth is, Daniel, I've been wanting to have a conversation with you for some time now. When I got your text, even though I suspected it wasn't meant for me, it gave me the courage to finally do it." My heart began to race. "What conversation?" "I've been offered a position to lead the East Coast division of Harrington Financial. It would mean relocating to New York." She looked up at me, her eyes serious. "And I want you to come with me as my chief financial officer." Of all the things I had expected her to say, this wasn't even on the list. Me? But I'm just a senior accountant. I don't have the experience for. "You have exactly the experience I need," she interrupted. "You understand my vision for ethical financial services. You've shown exceptional judgment and integrity. And frankly, you're the only person I trust to help me build something new." My mind was reeling. I don't know what to say. This is an incredible opportunity, but... I glanced toward Emma's room. My whole life is here. Emma's school, her friends, my support system. I can't just uproot her. Eliza nodded, understanding in her eyes. "I know it's a lot to ask. That's why I wanted to discuss it in person, to answer any questions and concerns you might have." She hesitated. "And to tell you that your accidental text wasn't entirely unwelcome." Our eyes met, and for the first time, I saw vulnerability in Eliza Matthews, the woman known for her unshakable confidence and sharp business acumen. "I've respected our professional boundaries," she continued, "but I've also come to admire you, Daniel. Not just your work, but the man you are, your dedication to Emma, your resilience after everything you've been through." I sat there, stunned into silence. The woman I'd secretly admired for months was sitting in my living room, offering me a dream job and suggesting she might have feelings for me too. It felt surreal, like I'd stepped into someone else's life. "I don't expect an answer today," she said, filling the silence. "Take some time to think about it. Talk to Emma. Consider what's best for both of you." As she stood to leave, Emma came bounding back into the room, clutching another drawing. "I made this for you, Eliza," she announced, holding up a picture of what appeared to be a woman with a big smile. That's you, Emma explained. Daddy says you have the prettiest smile. I closed my eyes, wondering if the floor might mercifully open up and swallow me whole. But Eliza just laughed, a genuine, warm sound I'd rarely heard at the office. Thank you, Emma. That's very sweet. She carefully folded the drawing and tucked it into her purse. I'll keep it on my desk. At the door, she turned to me one last time. Think about New York, Daniel. And maybe we could discuss it further over dinner sometime? No pressure, just conversation. After she left, I stood in the doorway for a long moment, trying to process everything that had just happened. My career, my future, and possibly my heart had just been turned upside down, all because of one misdirected text. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of emotions and difficult conversations. I talked to Emma about the possibility of moving to New York, expecting resistance. Instead, she asked if there were bigger playgrounds there and if Eliza would visit us. I spoke with my sister, Kate, who had been my rock since Sarah's death. She hugged me tightly and said, Sarah would want you to be happy, Danny. She'd want you to take chances. I researched schools in New York, housing options, and what the move would mean for Emma's development. I made pro and con lists, calculated budgets, and tried to approach the decision with the analytical precision I applied to financial statements. But in the quiet moments, when Emma was asleep and the house was still, I found myself thinking not about the career opportunity, but about Eliza. About the way she had looked at me in my living room, with a softness I'd never seen at work. About how natural she had been with Emma, despite having no children of her own. And I thought about Sarah. About the promises we'd made to each other in those final days, that I would find joy again, that I wouldn't close myself off from love, that I would give Emma a life full of happiness and possibility. 2 weeks after Eliza's unexpected visit, I invited her to dinner at my house. Emma helped me cook spaghetti, the only dish I could make with any confidence, and set the table with our mismatched plates. When Eliza arrived, Emma greeted her with a hug as if they were old friends. We ate together, talking and laughing, and for the first time in 3 years, our house felt full again, not just occupied, but alive with possibility. After Emma went to bed, Eliza and I sat on the porch swing, the summer night warm around us. I've been thinking about your offer, I said finally. And? Her voice was quiet, careful. I'm scared, I admitted. Scared of failing at the job, scared of disrupting Emma's life, scared of. I took a deep breath. Scared of feeling something for someone again. Eliza's hand found mine in the darkness. I'm scared too, she confessed. I've spent my whole life focused on proving myself in business. I've never made room for anything else. But then you sent that text, and I realized I'd been waiting for an excuse to cross that line we'd drawn. So where does that leave us? She turned to face me, her features soft in the porch light. It leaves us with a choice. We can play it safe, stay where we are, wonder what might have been. Or we can take a risk together. I've never been much of a risk taker, I said with a small smile. Neither have I, she replied. Maybe that's why this feels so important. That night, I didn't give her an answer about New York. But as I walked her to her car, I found the courage to do what I'd been wanting to do since she showed up at my door. I kissed her. It was gentle and brief, but it held the promise of more. The decision to move to New York wasn't made in a single moment. It was made in a series of small steps, Emma's excitement when we visited to look at apartments, the way Eliza included her in our conversations about the future, the growing certainty that this wasn't just about a job opportunity but about building a new life. 6 months after that accidental text, Emma and I moved into a brownstone in Brooklyn. Eliza lived 20 minutes away, close enough for regular dinners together but maintaining the space we all needed as we navigated this new relationship. The transition wasn't without challenges. Emma missed her friends and sometimes cried for her old room. I struggled with the learning curve of my new position, often working late to prove I deserved Eliza's faith in me. And Eliza and I had to find the balance between our professional and personal relationships, learning when to be boss and employee and when to be simply Daniel and Eliza. But we found our rhythm. Emma thrived in her new school, making friends and falling in love with the energy of the city. I discovered abilities I never knew I had, helping Eliza build a financial services division that prioritized ethics and client well-being over profit margins. And Eliza, brilliant, driven Eliza, revealed herself to be surprisingly playful with Emma, patient with my occasional doubts, and steadfast in her belief that what we were building, both professionally and personally, was worth every challenge. 1 year to the day after my misdirected text, we sat on a bench in Central Park, watching Emma feed the ducks. Eliza's hand was warm in mine, her head resting against my shoulder. "Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if you hadn't sent that text?" she asked. I smiled, remembering the panic I'd felt, how certain I was that I'd ruined everything. "I think we would have found our way here eventually," I said. "Some things are just meant to be, even if they take a wrong turn to get started." She laughed, the sound still my favorite in the world next to Emma's giggles. "A financial analyst who believes in fate? Who would have thought?" "I believe in taking chances," I corrected her. "And in having the courage to show up at someone's door when a text message gives you an opening." Later that night, after Emma was asleep, I gave Eliza a small box containing a key to our brownstone. It wasn't a proposal, we weren't quite there yet, but it was a promise that our doors, literally and figuratively, were always open to her. She gave me a key to her apartment in return, and as we stood in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd once made coffee for my boss who had unexpectedly shown up at my door, I realized that sometimes our biggest mistakes lead us exactly where we're supposed to be. 3 years later, Emma was the flower girl at our wedding. 9 years old now, she stood proudly beside us as we exchanged vows, her hand holding the small velvet pillow with our rings. In her speech at the reception, which she had insisted on giving despite my gentle suggestions that maybe she could just enjoy the cake, she told everyone the story of how her daddy had sent a love message to Eliza by accident. But it wasn't really an accident, she declared with the wisdom of a child who sees things more clearly than adults sometimes do. Daddy was just too scared to send it on purpose. The room erupted in laughter and applause, and Eliza squeezed my hand under the table, her wedding band catching the light. Life isn't perfect. We still have challenges, balancing our work and home lives, helping Emma navigate the complexities of having a stepmother while honoring the memory of the mother she lost, finding time for each other amidst the demands of running a successful business division. But every morning when I wake up beside Eliza, every evening when the three of us sit down to dinner together, every milestone in Emma's life that we celebrate as a family, I'm grateful for that moment of carelessness that led to the most important text message I ever sent. Sometimes the universe has to give us a little push, or in my case, a moment of technological ineptitude, to help us find our way to where we're meant to be. And sometimes the most terrifying mistakes turn out not to be mistakes at all, but the first step on a path we were always meant to walk. So if you're watching this and holding back from taking a chance, whether it's in love, in your career, or in pursuing a dream, remember that the biggest regrets in life are rarely the chances we took, but the ones we didn't.